We see 1 million visits a month to our web properties across the different markets that we operate in. And we are predominantly casino online slot games. We don't do any sports betting. So we have a very constructed, very pure view on player behavior and consumer trends. What we are seeing, of course, from a kind of regulatory point of view is a lot more restrictions on players and a lot more concern about responsible gaming, as it should be. There's definitely a trend towards crypto, Bitcoin, and non-fiat type betting and gambling, but also on a tokenized basis. So it could be like sweepstakes in the US, it could be tokenized games in crypto casinos across the world, and it's offshore, so it's not necessarily tied to a particular market. So what are we seeing? What we see is, as there's a new rule that comes into a market, there's a displacement effect of player behavior. So let's take one example in the UK and also in Germany. There's a lot of restrictions on not only the way the games are played and the things you can do and the timestamps and all those kind of things and the wagering amounts, but also the affordability checks. And the affordability checks, especially in the UK, and I know this because obviously I'm English, they will look at your bank account. They will ask you for the bank statements. They are mandated. An operator in the UK is mandated to check you can afford to gamble the money you're expecting to gamble. Now, that's a good idea if you're looking after making sure you've got a sort of pastoral care of your citizens. What really happens is it drives players into another way, into another place where those restrictions aren't necessarily helpful or even adhered to, because you have an offshore world where people can easily access in 3 clicks on a mobile. So we are seeing a big transference of kind of normal player behavior away from, direct debits or credit cards or even payday loans. Sometimes that was the problem areas, into much more of a Bitcoin and crypto world offshore. And that's being driven by adoption of decentralized finance anyway. So I think there was look at the surveys at the moment, 40% of under-30s in the US have traded in some kind of cryptocurrency. And that removes the barrier. That removes a barrier for trying these things. It's not like, well, I want to gamble, therefore I'm going to try and go into this crazy world of Bitcoin. They're already there. So the preferences of the young players, and let's call them Gen Zs, right? So because it's an easy bucket to put people into, they've grown up in a world where cryptocurrency is the norm. It's not an exception. It's something that they've grown up with as children, really, into this new world. So that doesn't scare them. And anyway, teenagers or young 20s, their brains are wired to take risks, much more than we would as older generation, because we've been through these pain points and we've learned the hard way, whether that's through embarrassment or financial loss or even danger. We've had those kind of prods to make us learn. But when you're in your sort of 15 to 25 years, that doesn't really happen. And it's not just boys, it's also girls. We see a lot of female players who are looking at bingo and lotteries and those kinds of things in much more detail. And so we do see this kind of complete change of generational shift of behavior. The regulatory landscape is really changing rapidly across markets as governments perceive there to be an issue around irresponsible gambling and player unsafety and all those kinds of things. So it's a bit counterintuitive. So we don't believe, and I personally don't believe, from what I've seen, more regulation is directly linearly related to more safe gambling. And the reason I'm saying that is because we can see the displacement shift. So in Germany, we don't really have much of a presence in German market, but I know that we have in our competitive peer group, they do. Germany has lots of restrictions. The number one search around the world right now for crypto casinos is Germany, by a long way, right? So in terms of percentage of population. The number two is the UK, again, in percentage of population. So this is a leading indicator to show you that they're not going to stop gambling. They're not going to stop doing the things they want to do. If they're addicted, they're addicted. If they want to play, they were going to play. It's just they're going to find out. People are very inventive. The world is very easy to reach. And we can see that displacement effect is causing potentially a lot more problems than the regulations is designed to solve. In Finland right now, so in Finland there's a law that's just going through their parliament to say all advertising and affiliation and everything else is going to be banned. It's just going to not be allowed. We think there's a slight confusion between YouTube influencers saying gamble, 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 and affiliates like ourselves that are providing helpful guidance and advice on the things to do and not do. We do have that role. We do feel responsible around offering players advice around game quality, around playability, and around return to player percentages, to say that this is worth doing. These are good games. Once you start to say you can't have those conversations, you can't talk about these things in our market, then it's open season. And now in another world where we've got artificial intelligence pushing content in massive levels, it's almost impossible to find a human voice around that. And that's, again, another role that an affiliate business like ours and a helpful content-focused company like we are, with human writers that are really playing these games, and they're making the right recommendations, and they're advising how you can get ripped off and where games might get stolen, and these aren't real, they're fakes. That's where we have a big role to play. And if you cut us off, then that voice is silenced. So our feelings on regulation generally is that it's required. You need to have regulation in a market. It's a good idea. It's a good thing to have. It's sign of a mature market. There are markets, for example, Denmark, where the regulation works pretty well, and everybody has an equal place in it, and therefore they can exist and coexist, and things seem to be very balanced. Then you get the concept of what we would call over-regulation, where over-regulation is so draconian, that it just forces everybody else out. It's like a big stamp, and everybody splashes out into other worlds. And we are definitely seeing that. The combination of cryptocurrency and gambling is a kind of heady, toxic mix, because you've got, and I've only been working in this world for just over a year, literally, and I had no experience of this world beforehand. I worked in affiliation for a long time, so I understand affiliation perfectly, and the technology behind affiliation, that's exactly where I came from. But to see my first year was literally meeting as many people as I could. I went to every event, I talked to as many people as I could, just to kind of pull my brain into where we are in this world. And I've talked to the most above the line people, and I've also talked to some pretty shady characters, as you meet in various different shows. And it's sometimes the conversation is going in a way where I'm thinking, oh my goodness, this is really, really bad. This is not something that I want to be involved in personally. I don't think we should involve this as a company, but it exists. And it's just been an interesting eye-opener to understand where somebody gets an amount of money, it gets converted into cryptocurrency, and then it goes through an online casino with no KYC, and they give 15% cash back or incentives through a VIP program at a scale that's incredible, and then the money just gets popped out with an invoice nice and clean on the other end. That's something that it's just like terrifying. It's terrifying, and you can see that. And the danger is the normal kind of law-abiding world gets dragged into that space because they don't have the understanding of where the risks might lie. And if you go through some of these peer-to-peer social tokenized processes from I'm not playing with this, but I'm going to, and all the touch points you get all the way through are people you don't know who they are. They will come to you and say, I can help you convert into crypto, I can help you off-ramp, on-ramp. There's thousands of companies that are offering help and people, but you don't know anything about them. You don't know whether they're trying to steal your money or not steal your money. And then if they do, there's almost nothing you can do about it. You can't kind of go to the bank because, you try and buy crypto on a normal clearing bank and they'll tell you not to. And so you have to get around that. And once you've round that, you're in this world where it's very difficult to escape from. So coming back to the core rationale for an affiliate like Game Lounge and our sites that we run, we feel we have a very strong role to play in trying to advise people and players that all they're trying to do is have fun and have a little, win a bit of money and not lose too much money. We want to advise them through that, and I think that's really where the Game Lounge properties are at their most valuable. So channelization is obviously the amount of market share that the operator, that the licensed and the regulated market has versus the black market. And we see the numbers that some regulators are claiming, and then we see the reality of what happens in terms of traffic. So we have a much clearer idea of really where the channelization lies. The best thing the industry can do in terms of next steps is just talk a lot more, involve more stakeholders, especially affiliates, because we do see, I've said a few times, we see early warning signs. We can see the passenger traffic. We can see consumer behaviour changing. We can feel the commercial pressures coming from regulated and unregulated and unlicensed and offshore. We're having these conversations the whole time.